Hello everyone, in this video we will talk about this statement. Okay, so it should also be the first statement of the constructor, same as a super statement. It is used to invoke same class constructor, whereas in super statement is used to invoke the superclass constructor. Okay, so that is the difference. And this also, every constructor should have only one super statement or this statement. They can either of this, but they cannot have both, and only one this statement is allowed in a constructor. It cannot be written or added by the compiler, hence programmer must define whenever he needed. So in this statement case, always programmer has to define in a constructor, no default this statement added by the compiler. Whereas in super statement case, if programmer do not define, compiler adds a default super statement. And this statement, if programmer wants to define, it can be argumented or non-argumented. Argumented this statement invokes argumented same class constructor, and non-argumented this statement invokes non-argumented same class constructor. So the functionality is same, calling the constructor, but in super statement it is a superclass constructor, whereas in this statement same class constructor. Rest all is almost same. So let's look at the same in the program. Let's have is a constructor within a sample6 class. Let's define 2 to 3 constructor, overloaded constructor. Let's say int double b. Okay, so what I am trying to do here is I have defined a 3 different constructor which are differ in their arguments, one with no argument, one with integer argument, and another one with double argument. Okay, so let's define this statement or any line of code within the constructor. So here what I will do is I will say this, and let me pass some parameter within which, let's say 2.2, sorry, within a bracket 2.2. okay, and then I will say print statement non-argumented a sample 6 constructor, a sample 6 constructor, and let's do the same for integer argumented one. Here I will say this with no argumented, no parameter passed. Sorry, the bracket should be come over here. Okay, and let's print a statement. This is int argumented a sample 6 constructor. Okay, so this one okay, here also what we can do is with this we will say this and pass some argument, say for example 5 integer argumented, to call the is the problem here. Okay, so with this we're calling double, and with this we're calling we'll be able to call this one this will call the this will call this and this. Okay, so it will fall under the loop. So just assume that if you are creating an object with double argumented, so then what will happen, since this statement will call the integer augmented constructor, and within that we have this statement with no arguments and this no parameters, which means this will call the a sample 6 constructor, the non-argumented constructor, and within that we have this 2.2 which will again call this one. So the loop will continue. So let's not declare this one, this okay, otherwise let's remove this double argumented part. This is enough for us to understand. Here what you can say is so either you can have it or just ignore this part. Yeah, so let's assume we are not written here. Okay, so one constructor without this statement we have not defined, and no default, so no default this statement as well, right? So in super statement it will be added by compiler, but in this case we have not written, means it will not be added even by the compiler. And we have one super statement within one of the constructor, integer argumented constructor, whereas this is non-argument, no parameter is passed within this, hence it will call the same class non-argumented constructor, which is this one. Okay, so let's move on to the main method. And in main method let's create an object of a sample 6 is 6. There is a spelling mistake. Okay, so we will create this object without any parameters and one with parameters. And here we will pass integer arguments, say for example 10. So in the let's comment out the second line to understand what is the output of the first line. So as soon as we create the object as1, this particular class constructor gets called, okay, and only this line of code get executed, right? And there is no connection between this and this, these two constructors, right? So the only output is non-argumented a sample 6 constructor. Non-argumented a sample 6 constructor, right? So now what we will do, we will comment the other one to understand the functionality of this statement. So now when we are creating a object with integer argument is passed, so this will call the integer argumented constructor, and within which we have this statement, and this statement will call the same class constructor, same class. So here also no parameter is used, and hence same class non-argumented constructor will be invoked, and that block of code gets executed, and then control will come back to this one, the integer argumented constructor, and continue the execution. So the output would be non-argumented sample 6 constructor. This is integer argumented sample 6 constructor. Okay, so non-argumented a sample 6 constructor, this is integer argumented a sample 6 constructor. Okay, so that is the functionality of this statement, to call the same class constructor based on the argument passed. It will call the same class constructor accordingly.